From the outside, he looked like an ordinary king, but historians don't really have kind things to say about him. At the end of the 1400s, he became the ruler of the Kingdom of Naples in Italy. In his early years, he brought peace and prosperity to his country. So, in the eyes of the people, he was not a bad king. But when it came to his enemies, things were a bit different. In 1462, several nobles started a rebellion against Ferdinand. Their plan was simple: let's remove this king and put someone else on the throne. Ferdinand responded in a very classic king-style way. "All right, guys, let's talk. I forgive all of you." The rebellious nobles thought, "Wow, what a reasonable and understanding king." Spoiler, he wasn't. The moment they arrived at the meeting, they were all captured, and shortly after, executed. But Ferdinand didn't stop there. According to some stories, he had the bodies of his enemies mummified and displayed in his palace. Yes, you heard that right. The man basically opened an enemy museum. Just imagine walking into the palace and the king says, "See that guy in the corner? Yeah, he tried to rebel against me." Really motivating interior decoration. In the end, Ferdinand ruled Naples for about 20 years. But he left one clear message for his enemies: rebelling against me can be a really bad tourist experience. Timur, or as the West knows him, Tamerlane. That nickname lame doesn't mean boring like you might think. It literally means he was lame. When he was young, an arrow struck his knee and another hit his hand, leaving him permanently injured for the rest of his life. Now, if you're thinking, okay, he was injured, he probably stayed home after that. No. On the contrary, Timur grew up to become one of the most feared war leaders in history. He came out of Central Asia and went on to conquer Persia, the Caucasus, most of the Middle East, and even parts of Eastern Europe. By the early 1400s, he had built a massive empire, so the guy was basically traveling across the world while half disabled, but not for tourism. It was a conquest tour. But Timur had one particular trait. He was extremely ruthless. One of the most terrifying examples of this happened in the city of Isfahan. The city surrendered to Timur. Timur said fine, allowed some looting, and continued on his way. But later, some people in the city killed several of Timur's soldiers, and that was a really bad idea. When Timur heard the news, he returned and gave his soldiers a single order: kill everyone in the city. The result? Around 100,000 people were massacred. According to some accounts, his soldiers even built towers out of the skulls of the people they killed. Yes, actual skull towers. Historians estimate that Timur's wars caused the deaths of around 17 million people in total. That was about 5% of the world's population at the time. In short, Timur's message was pretty clear: surrender, or become a very bad example in the history books. Next up, from Chinese history, King Jie, the last ruler of the Jie dynasty. The Xia dynasty is considered China's first dynasty, ruling for hundreds of years. But then King Jie showed up, and things quickly went off the rails. Jie's leadership style was simple. If there's money in the treasury, it should be spent, just not on the people, on himself. Luxury palaces, endless parties, extravagant entertainment. The guy was basically living the VIP life of the ancient world. And then there was Moshi, a woman he was obsessed with, and Jie did some truly bizarre things to impress her. For example, one time he had servants dig a giant lake filled with wine. Yes, an actual wine lake. Then he told thousands of people to drink it dry. Spoiler, it didn't go well. Another day, he discovered Moshi loved the sound of silk tearing. Jie's solution? He had the finest silks from across the kingdom brought to him, just so he could rip them apart and make noise for her. Of course, all this luxury came with a cost. Taxes skyrocketed, the people suffered, and neighboring states were not impressed. Eventually, people thought maybe it's time for a new king. So Tang of the Shang dynasty built an army, revolted, and overthrew King Jie. After about 500 years of rule, the Xia dynasty came to an end. King Jie spent the rest of his life in exile, powerless and penniless. The lesson history teaches us here is simple. If you're a king, a wine-filled lake is probably not the best long-term investment. Next up is Leopold II of Belgium. When people think of Belgium, they usually think of waffles, chocolate, maybe some good fries. But in the late 1800s, Belgium was also connected to one of the darkest colonial stories in history. At the Berlin Conference, European powers divided large parts of Africa among themselves, and Leopold had a brilliant idea. Instead of taking a colony for Belgium, he took one for himself. That place was the Congo Free State, a massive region in what is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Leopold claimed he was there for humanitarian reasons, helping the people, spreading civilization, that sort of thing. But in reality, he wanted one thing: money. More specifically, rubber. When the automobile industry started growing, rubber became extremely valuable, and the Congo had a lot of rubber trees. So Leopold forced millions of local people to collect rubber. If workers didn't meet their quotas, they were beaten, sometimes killed, and in some cases, soldiers cut off people's hands as punishment. Yes, actual hands. Historians estimate that between 5 and 10 million people died in the Congo during Leopold's rule. Eventually, missionaries and journalists exposed what was happening. The world reacted with outrage, and in 1908, Belgium forced Leopold to give up the Congo. Even at his funeral, many people reportedly booed him, which is a rare achievement. Imagine living such a controversial life that people heckle your funeral. Next up is someone with one of the most terrifying nicknames in history, Vlad the Impaler. As you might guess from the name, his hobbies were a bit unusual. Vlad ruled Wallachia in the 1400s, a region located in what is now Romania. Back then, ruling a small country wasn't easy. There were powerful neighbors on all sides and constant wars. Vlad's solution was pretty simple: make everyone afraid. His most famous method was impalement. Yes, a very long wooden stake. Historians say he killed thousands of people this way. In one famous story, when an enemy army approached the city, they were met with a very disturbing sight. Along the road stood thousands of people impaled on stakes. Many soldiers reportedly lost their nerve after seeing that scene. So Vlad clearly understood the psychology of war. But it wasn't only his enemies. According to some stories, Vlad would sometimes eat dinner while watching people being impaled. While most people watched TV during dinner, Vlad had a slightly different form of entertainment. Because of these brutal methods, he became known in the West as Vlad the Impaler. Interestingly, some people in Romania still see him as a hero because he defended his land against the Ottoman Empire. So history is a bit divided about Vlad. Was he a hero or one of the most terrifying rulers in history?